Is Nancy Pelosi losing power? I mean, everything has a beginning, middle, and end. I mean, everything does have an end. There's a beginning, middle, and end. And Nancy Pelosi, while she may waddle and hobble off into the sunset because of all of those money moves she made, and of course she's running for re-election, it's quite clear that the influence of Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats received one big gut check after November 5th when Trump won, when he got reelected. And to be clear here, the Democrats not only lost the presidency, but the Senate and House. Trump also getting the Electoral College and popular vote also gives a boost to this momentum. And the Democrats are in a little bit of a quandary here. They have no roster, and they're desperately going to have to look for new leadership. I mean, the Clintons don't have what it takes. I mean, they'll hold on to power. The Obamas, too, they'll hold on to power. Even Pelosi and the other old guard. But Pelosi in particular right now, because unlike the Obamas and Clintons, she is actually still in office. She is actually running for re-election again. Surprise, surprise, when one would think she would retire by now. But hey, you got a corrupt politician, they'll keep on staying in power for however long it takes. But we do have to do an autopsy on perhaps her overall political legacy. Is the power waning, and how will the Democrats adapt to these changing, uncertain times? So let's pull this video up here. Shout out to Case Study QB, who's wrongly being censored. After all, he does some great work, so show him some love for his channel.
How influential is Nancy Pelosi still within the Democratic Party? Or is there any discomfort among Democrats about Nancy Pelosi's level of influence within the party?
Well, she's very influential insofar as she was probably the single most influential person in forcing Biden out of the race this past summer. She's hugely influential with donors, longtime sort of established donors of the Democratic Party. She maintains support within Congress, where she's seen as sort of a leader outside of the formal leadership and somebody who's a whisperer of sorts to Hakeem Jeffries, who's the elected leader of the Democratic conference in the House. That being said, her era of influence is certainly beginning to end here. She's not as influential today, for example, as she was a few years ago when she was the Speaker of the House. And obviously that influence is going to decline in these next 2 years when you see a new generation of leaders really take hold and reshape the direction of the party.
Yeah, I've been hearing that there have been rumblings about, Aaron, about Nancy Pelosi taking so much of the spotlight that Hakeem Jeffries hasn't been able to really lead the party in the way that he was elected to do.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I would say that Leader Jeffries is anything of a shrinking violet. He certainly knows how to grab headlines, make news, and also make the case for his own leadership. But look, Nancy Pelosi is somebody that still does loom very large over our politics. The only woman to hold, the position of Speaker of the House, somebody who was at one time one of the most powerful woman in American politics before Vice President Kamala Harris ascended to her role. And so, yes, I agree with Philip that her stature may be on the decline, but from such a perch, right? And with, I think Hakeem Jeffries is aware that she still does hold a lot of influence and that there is still a lot that he can learn from her. And I don't think that that's a mistake. She certainly is somebody who knows how to win and somebody who knows how to count votes.
So I had to play that uninterrupted. I played that uninterrupted so all of you can see firsthand, first of all, number one, that they can't pull out those numbers. They can't pull out their strengths. So I just want to let you guys know that as we see the Democrats, especially people like Pelosi, they're trying to, in their absolute desperation, try and show they still have some of that gas in the tank. They don't. They don't have that power. They don't have that influence. They don't have that strength. They don't have the know-how. They don't have the power. They're running out of energy. And that's something that all the Democrats have in common now. And no one really has an idea of who's going to be the new leader, because what lessons were learned? I mean, when you have Nancy Pelosi at the helm since aftermath of the 2016 election in 2020, and let's be clear here, she was put again as Speaker in the House thanks to AOC and the squad. Guess what happened? Nothing changed. No lessons were learned. Case in point here. Shout again, the Case Study QB.
and in
want to pull this up here again. Sorry for that.
in 2016, we lost. And in 2020, the lessons learned from 2016 were probably not right. Because if you look at the slate of candidates that ran in 2020, they went hard left. They all tried to out-left Bernie. In the end, Joe Biden came in. Joe Biden was a moderate. He got more votes than anyone. So I think it's important going forward that the party not overreact to what we don't know exactly what happened. It'll take some time, but to not just instinctively say, we got to go the opposite way. We got to go more progressive. We got to rile our people up even more, because that doesn't seem to be the case. In 2016.
So they can't rile up their people. I want to pull up this other video here too. We'll talk about the insular society, insular shell that they're putting in. Shout out to Melissa Brooke. The heart don't break our hearts. Drain circling behavior.
Pod Save America themselves have been relatively disappointing, because they were supposed to be our ecosystem to compete with the right-wing Ben Shapiro's. We were supposed to have this information chamber that was Pod Save, but instead they've kind of become this cocoon themselves, where challenging them becomes a hissy fit back and forth. And their messaging has not been one that's been able to prove successful with those same voters that we're talking.
By the way, automatic selector. He forgot about the super delegates. Absolutely. Point well taken.
About Donald Trump did well with. And so I think everybody needs to take a moment of self-reflection, including myself, to figure out how we can get better for 2025. People are talking about 2028. If we get smacked in 2025 in New Jersey and Virginia, then you blow it up. But until then, people just need to stop wanting to hear themselves talk.
Oh, Democrats fight over Harris' strategy of not going on the Rogan podcast. Even if she did, she would have lost. But then again, at least it would have put her in a better light of at least maybe showing herself, showing some concern. Because look, here are the rising Democrat populist leaders to watch. Rising leaders to watch. I've read this name before, these names, but hey, you got John Fetterman. Okay, this guy who's supposed to be like the Pennsylvania version of Bernie Sanders. Then turns out that he wasn't. Then you have Senator Chris Murphy. All right. Became most well known for his vocal criticism and consoling response to the tragic shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in his native Connecticut. Since then, he's been considered among Capitol Hill colleagues as a reliable Democrat in their caucus. That guy. AOC, we talked about her too on Friday. Possibly the next Nancy Pelosi, Nancy 2.0. And the squad, only squad in name only. Row your boat, Ro Khanna. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. UAW President Sean Fain. Joe Rogan of the left. They're looking for a Joe Rogan still. Why? When you had one already. Bernie Sanders showed up on the Joe Rogan show. That's what happened, right? And of course, Mastermind Hours writing, wait, John Fetterman is a Democrat? And also, M-Ban says, Bernie gets paid to protect us from paid shills. No conflict, just getting paid. Oh, my goodness. But who knew? Who knew indeed? Who knew indeed? But now, folks, I want to pull this up here as well. Because, hey, holding leadership accountable. That's something Nancy Pelosi is not familiar with.
So you had Bernie Sanders tweeting on Monday, if the Democratic Party is to become a Democratic Party, the first job of the new DNC chair is to get the super PAC money out of Democratic primaries. AIPAC and other billionaire-funded super PACs cannot be allowed to select Democratic candidates. They typically don't. They're not going to put their money into a DNC chairman's race. So again, for me, as the former head of a party, as county chairman and a state chairman, that to me is short-sighted thinking about where the landscape is. One thing that has very little to do with the other. Super PACs and all those guys play in elections and campaigns. That's a different conversation than running for chairman and telling the people who are going to write checks, we don't want you writing checks.
Yeah,
Because after all, the DNC chair is part of that big club. The Democrats have admitted that the Democrat Party is a private institution. They can pick whoever they want to be their nominee. I mean, we saw it already out in the open in 2024. Yes, 2026, 2020, clear examples. The system was rigged against Bernie Sanders. I mean, that's just what happened during the Democratic primary. But then we get to 2024. No open primary, even though there were people running. Corporate media was saying there's no such thing to focus on a primary, and then say that there was a primary, even though there wasn't a primary. I mean, Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., Sean Phillips, and yes, even Cenk Uygur himself were all part of that, and they got nothing. And of course, when Biden flopped during his first debate against Trump, Kamala gets anointed to become the new nominee. No process whatsoever. Who do you think makes these decisions? The establishment, with the approval of the DNC chair.
You're absolutely right. With all due respect to Senator Sanders, you might want to join the party if you want to have something.
Well, there is that.
So, just on its face, that's a little problematic for me. Now, in terms of the money, look, that's not the DNC's issue. You're exactly right, Mr. Chairman, that that kind of money is in local races and state races, and the laws vary by state. Yep. So for the DNC to spend its time and energy on what state A says versus what state B says, versus what candidate C says, just doesn't make any sense to me. There's so much work for the next chair to do. That would not be in the top 10 of things that I'd focus on.
11 or 12.
50.
Oh, God. I'm vomiting in my brain. Hold on. There's a little bit more of this, folks. Bear with me. I'm so sorry.
How do you create a process as someone who's on the rules committee that is inclusive, that is transparent, that people come out feeling good and feeling like they can rally and unify behind whomever this is?
So you start with exactly what we're doing. On December 12th, we will set the rules for the race that allows everyone and anyone who wants to run to understand what the thresholds are. They have to have 40 signatures. That's what we're proposing. We'll see if it passes. There's a number of steps, but that's the first thing. Make a set of rules that are transparent, that anybody who wants to run can see, read, and decide if they can adhere to those. And once that's done, now we're going to have 4 forums across the country in January. Now, I have the privilege of having run this process in 2017, so I know a little bit about it. So you have these forums across the country. They will be in person and virtual, and anyone can go to them and listen to the candidates talk about their platform, talk about their proposals, and how they intend to be the change maker that we need in this moment. And then we'll have an election on February 1st, the secret ballots for the 448 DNC members. That's who votes. So there's a lot of talk about what members of Congress want to. It's the 448 members who have been elected in their states to represent the Democratic Party. Those are the people who are going to be making decisions.
And so I pause here. I stop here. The people making decisions. Let's talk about the people making decisions. Let's talk about the people who are incapable of understanding the bigger issues at play. Such as for the fact, well, it's the party that's going to select, not the voters. That's to be expected. I mean, both parties are one and the same. I mean, you really think that the parties really care what their constituents think? Now, the Republican establishment learned that lesson with Donald Trump and his wave of populism. Trump is going to probably reorganize the Republican Party, and his legacy will be felt in that institution for quite some time. It will never disappear. Everybody's going to fall in line because, remember, he had one of the many reasons why he won. Not only is it for his ego and pride, but also to maintain power over the same organization that he created, Make America Great Again. He'd be a fool to give it up. After all, you had Ron DeSantis and a few others vying for that position because they wanted that leadership position. That's what they wanted. So, going forward from here and acknowledging this and being well aware of this, we need to look at something else. The party, the Democrats, are going to be selecting who they want. That means anybody who's a high-stakes player in the Democratic Party will be making that decision. So one has to wonder, come the next midterm election cycle in 2026, because February is when this election will take place, how will other people acknowledge this leadership? Because Nancy Pelosi, for a long time, was part of that game. She had influence over who would be the next DNC chair. She's always had her power. But the problem with Nancy is that she's left such a huge imprint on the Democrats that they're forever stuck in the same machinations and systems and infrastructure that she helped create, she helped promote. You can't really turn a smelly, stinky, moldy house into something that's appeasing for people to live in. No wonder the Democrats lost their coalition. Nancy Pelosi's influence is waning. The Democrats have no heavy hitters. The Democrats are going to have to pick a DNC chair. And no matter who they pick, they're going to be stuck in this position of, how do I clean the mess of the Pelosi, the Clinton, the Obama, and everybody else has been playing that game. They have no leadership plan. They have no policies to run on. They're out of gas. They're at their lowest. It's extinction level event. The Democrats are at the point of no return. How do you recover, Democrats, when for a long time you felt that your current old guard was just fine? Nobody or nothing lasts forever. Everything does have a beginning, middle, and end. It always ends. Now, we gave this warning. We said this would happen. And so many people in the vote blue, no matter whose sphere, dismissed anyone giving that alarm bell. And while on paper, our revolution, Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, DSA, trying to reform the Democratic Party sounded like a good idea. But with these videos that we played, Nancy Pelosi's influence waning away, Democrats have no idea who they have as their leader and whether they learned anything from 2016, 2020, even 2024. They haven't learned anything. They're setting themselves up for failure. Perhaps the best thing the Democrats can do right now is apologize, but it's too little too late. So how do we do this? Now, I know all of you are burnt out by electoral politics, but citizen ballot initiatives, these are things to vote for. Building movements and organizations not connected to Washington, D.C., these are things to push forward on. These are the things that matter. These are the things that will actually inspire people to get involved in politics. But now's the time to act. But waiting on the Democrats and hoping that whoever they pick as a new DNC chair will do something good, no. It's just another Nancy Pelosi. Maybe not as corrupt, but a lesser version. But we all know a thing about lesser of evils. It's still evil. Break away from the two-party system. They have no plan, and that's the thing. They expected everyone, the voters, to be stupid enough to go along with it. Wake up.
It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Whether or not in Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
I don't mean to sound alarmist, but most of what they let you read is garbage. Most of it's designed to warp our minds until subconsciously you find you'll take the time to lick their boots free of grime and wipe their minds free of tarnish. Oil is the centerpiece, a body count of millions is the garnish. So how's it feel to know we funded every carcass? That every year our taxes pay for carpet bombing Gaza under shroud of darkness? Or that we spend enough a year to house and feed each homeless person in the streets on turning families in apartment buildings in the Middle East to bloody craters full of charred garments? And our media is silent at best. At worst, they can find it in themselves to call war crimes clashes and label children burned to ashes terrorists who played a stupid game and reaped the harvest. And every time we try to paint the truth, the news sends their slugs to suck off all the varnish and distort it into something harmless. See, the media will hang you by your feet and keep you half asleep. So yes, I'm here to set you free, but freedom won't be sweet because you'll fall 1,000 feet when I come cut you out your harness. They say those who dream the deepest fall the farthest. They also say that home is where the heart is. But if home for you is Gaza, Netanyahu's got you painted as a target. Perhaps it's not the impact, but it's what you see when falling that will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the sound of all those children crying out in those apartments that will hit the hardest. Maybe all those little bodies scattered in the dirt will hit the hardest. Maybe seeing human lives assigned such little worth will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the knowledge that you're paying for the darkest of atrocities committed on this earth that will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the knowledge that we give 10 million a day to oppressors who possess the kind of Medicare you'll die in debt before you see that's gonna hit the hardest. Maybe then you'll see you've always had more in common with the commoners whose slaughter we fund every day in Gaza than our senators and bosses. Maybe then you'll see our country never had a conscience. Maybe then the retroactive guilt will make you nauseous. Maybe what hits harder than the impact is the act of being conscious, of knowing your complicity and helplessness to try and stop the bloody deeds of Congress. And that no matter who's in office, America preserves its foreign interests by whatever means its greed demands, however monstrous. You see, we'll always need a place to drain our contras. And Biden's got a backup plan, should harm befall the Holy Land. Wipe it off the map, he'll draw it back on with an iron hand. He demands an Israel or reasonable effigy to exercise democracy and colonize the Middle East. Regardless of the human cost of phosphorus atrocities, bought and paid with money they rerouted out the budget for the non-essential things like ever making Flint's water clean. So maybe what hits hardest is the day you see this country for its actual priorities. And nevermore no honest peace attempting sleep. Maybe then you'll look at politicians making speeches like a blood-encrusted beast espousing destiny to empty seats and fellow leeches. As the gauntlet of democracy extends its brutal reach, like a giant wave of trash come to crash on foreign beaches. Maybe build a base, throw a flag down and heavily pollute the region. Rape your ecosystems, gut your fauna and congratulate you on your new allegiance. Oops, we mean alliance. This is something mutual unless you're non-compliant. We stole something crucial on which you can be reliant. So maybe what hits hardest is the centrist saying both sides need to stop the violence. And those would be the very same centrists saying we should all accept police brutality, who hem and haw and clutch their fucking pearls and spend their time condemning riots. But very soon will come the day the centrists all get censored like the rest of us, and pious as they'll try to be, they won't stay quiet. But they'll just end up shouting in the void that they were also quick to render us subscribers. And it will be too late to light the fires. So far away tonight, they burn the spires of a region set ablaze for which you've paid for every pyre. Which is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. And call it foreign interests or American desires. This is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. Far away tonight, they burn the spires of a region set ablaze for which you've paid for every pyre. Call it foreign interests or American desires.